in the 1970s, I was a teenager in London when the IRA was setting out a lot of bonds.
Yeah.
And I was not political, but I remember thinking, why can't they talk to each other? That seemed like the only logical, sensible answer. Jerry Adams' voice, leader of the Sinn Féin, wasn't allowed to be heard at that time. You could see him, and an actor could read his words, but he was so other that you couldn't actually hear his real voice.
Yeah.
30 or so years later, now Martin McGuinness and Ian Paisley are not only talking together, they're laughing together, and it's a symbol of great hope.
Yes.
My question is, it took that long. Are we, I suspect possibly world leaders are learning that talking does create positive benefits. I wonder if somebody somewhere very high up is trying to speak to bin Laden. I suspect somebody is. So do you think that's the case? Do you think someone somewhere?
I mean, one hopes that people are talking about peace, because when they're talking about that, they're not talking about making more bombs. So, I would hope for that. And you're right. Your lesson is a good one in the sense that impatience is a real danger in border crossing. and the interesting thing about the Irish situation is that for that circumstance, oftentimes it's much easier for the connections to be made outside of the actual place where the situation is the hottest, right? For English and Irish to meet each other, for example, in the United States and Canada was much easier. And there were opportunities there. So it seems to me that maybe one of the ways we might be able to exploit this is to sort of go to the diasporas and get them to talk with each other as a way to take some first steps, where you can have, Turkish Americans and Armenian Americans in America begin to have a dialogue before we expect across the border there for some dialogues to start happening. But I think that these things are, in peace work, generally, we've tended not to pursue the small. The big temptation is we want it to be big and impressive and have our fundraiser. And what we're talking about are just basically some cups of coffee at a room where we can sit around and talk. And that can be a very important building block. So yeah, that was a good lesson. Folks, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. I appreciate your time.